This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thanks a lot, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. And of course, you also, I'm sure, listen to me and the rest of the crew on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show. Now, if you don't, if you're, say, new to this podcast and say, well, what the heck is that? Well, that's a live show we do every Saturday morning from 6 to 8 Mountain Time. And if you miss any of those radio shows, you can always go to montanooutdoor.com and you can listen to it again. Of course, montanooutdoor.com is where many of you probably found this podcast. Please also share the podcast with your friends. That way they can join in with us on a regular basis here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Now, for your friends, you can tell them, of course, they can go to montanooutdoor.com and there's a great big link right there that says, new podcast. They can go there, but they can also go to anywhere they normally get podcasts. Also, I always like to give us a very special welcome to our military listening to us overseas. So many of you listen to the Montana Outdoor Podcast and also to the radio show while you're serving our country all around the world, Afghanistan and Iraq and all over the place. So thank you very much for your service. We sincerely appreciate that and what you do, and I hope this brings a little bit of home back to you. Now, let's talk about an event that we've chatted a little bit about before, but this thing just keeps getting better and bigger and more fun. I'm talking about Mack Days. So many of you have heard me talk about it, and more of you are now getting involved in Mack Days. Now, there's two Mack Days that go on, two different tournaments. One is in the spring. That's what we're going to be talking about because that's coming up very soon. And also is Fall Mack Days. And if you remember last time we talked about Mack Days, we had a couple fishermen on, and it was a very popular podcast because many of you were very interested in how some of these leading tournament participants, these leading anglers, how they fish Mack Days. That was really interesting. So we thought we'd do that again. We've got Jason Mahlen waiting. He's going to chat with us a little bit. Before we get started, though, I wanted to have Cindy Benson come on and talk about Mack Days in general and give you some great information about how you can get involved, talk a bit about the history of the fishing tournament. Of course, it takes place on Flathead Lake. Cindy, let's get you on first. Welcome to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Good to have you on again. You're up there in, where are you at right now, Cindy?
I live at Lone Pine. It's up here
okay. Up by Hot Springs. Most of the time, when the tournament's going on, you're over
Blue Bay. Yes, our headquarters is there, and anglers go in and out of there a lot. Of people use that. They've just revamped the dock out there, so it's really nice. The boat ramp is still the same, but Blue Bay is looking pretty good for Spring Mack Days right now.
Awesome. So, first, for the new podcast listeners, I was wondering if you could take a little time and tell us about yourself, what you do for Spring Mack Days, just so folks know what your role is in this great tournament.
Sure. I work for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes in the Natural Resources Department for Fisheries. My job title is Fisheries Specialist. I began the working on the Mack Days fishing event in 2002. I can't believe how many years have gone by. We do 2 events a year, spring and fall, like you said. Through the years, I've just gradually gotten more and more and more into the management of it. I do work under a biologist who is the real boss of the whole thing. Mack Days began by the tribes as a tool for the fisheries managers to use to try to reduce the non-native lake trout in Flathead Lake. The lake trout population exploded in the mid-'80s. They wiped out the kokanee salmon that were there in like 2 years. Kokanee was gone.
Yeah, that was
a real popular fishery.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest biological nightmares, I think, in modern history. I think, especially obviously for Flathead Lake. So, the history of Mack Days. When was the first Mack Days? When did it start, Cindy?
We started in the fall of 2002. We had an event that was like 15 days long. I don't remember for sure. We had a total of 888 lake trout that were turned in that year. So to compare, today we get more than that many fish in one day a lot of times.
Wow.
It has really grown. The anglers are who make it successful. They are the ones that go out there and do the work. They've learned over the years different techniques. They've learned the areas to go to, the depths they need to be in. And some of these guys like Jason have gotten really good at that. And every year it's just interesting to see, how they're going to come in doing, and if other people are going to figure out their techniques, what they need to do. I always think in my own mind, I read this one time, you have to write your own story. People want to come out there and they want to catch a lot of fish, but you've got to put in the effort. You've got to put in the time. You've got to learn as you go, and try different things.
Right. Well, this tournament truly is, I in my opinion, I think it's one of the most unique fishing tournaments in the world, in that it has so many different elements to it. But one of the big elements that I think is just fantastic is, we have a situation in Flathead Lake where, as you said, the lake trout, non-native to the lake, got in there. They exploded in population. And now, of course, it's making it very difficult for the native fish, the cutthroat and the bull trout to survive. And so something had to be done. Now,
that's right. And that's why they came up with this.
Right.
To try to increase the population of the native fish. The native fish are important. They're important to the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribal people, and also to all people, in Montana, all anglers also.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a very special set of genetics, I think. They go clear up into Canada to spawn out of Flathead Lake. You can't go get a hatchery fish somewhere and throw it in the lake and expect it to find those spawning grounds and stuff. So
right.
I think it's very, very important to save what we have here now for future generations. If people don't do it now, if we can't make a difference, in 20 years, people are going to say, "Hey, what was going on? Why didn't you guys try to do something to save those fish?"
Right.
This is happening all over. Species are disappearing all over. And as long as we have this opportunity to make a difference, I hope that everyone can understand how important that is to do this now. Barry said one time, if these native fish in Flathead Lake were elephants and people could see actually what's going on, they would think about it a lot more.
Yeah.
And maybe more about what's going on. Fish are under the water and we don't see them. So that's why it's so hard to get people to understand how important this is. Tribal people depended on these fish, on native species, for a food source.
Yeah.
You know, they knew where to go at certain times of the year where they could catch fish to use as food, and that was important to them and also to other people too. So that's one of the reasons that I think this is so important. We don't want to lose these fish. Mm-hmm.
Well, and what I think makes this tournament so unique is that typically when we hear about, any kind of species population control and all that, typically it's the biologists and that all get together and they're working on that. But in this case, you guys said, hey, let's recruit our fishermen. Let's let them be part of this and help us with that and have some fun with it. And so right. I think that's just such a unique and a great way to get everybody involved and take some ownership in this issue and make it theirs. And it has really been I think just a great success in showing how everybody can get involved to do it. So in this effort to help bring these native fish back, how is that going? I mean, is there a way that the biologists have been able to see if some of those populations are being able to come back?
I'm not the biologist, but I can tell you that they say that they are seeing signs that there is a difference being made. Mm-hmm. It takes years for something like this to happen, but they're seeing what they think are some signs that this could be maybe turning around a bit, and I hope that's true. You can go out there today, and if you know where to go, you can catch a westlaw cutthroat trout, but there's very few of them. You can catch a bull trout once in a while by accident. But years ago, people were those were the primary fish out there, the dominant fish out there. I talked to an older gentleman one time down at the Walstead State Park. I was waiting for boats to come in as I was doing a creel survey, and he was looking out there across Big Arm Bay, and he almost had tears in his eyes. He said, when I was a young boy, and I'd come down here in the evenings, and you could look out across this bay, and you'd see flats rising up out of the water all across the bay.
Right.
What they called the whistle cutthroat. Well, you don't see that today at all. Mm-hmm. But we're hoping that, by doing these fishing events, and we also have another tool, the netting that they do, that we're going to slowly lower the numbers in Flathead Lake and hopefully see the native fish respond and their population coming up.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I wanted to address, and I think this might be a good time to do it, is that, with any change, it doesn't go absolutely perfect. And there's always some folks that say, hey, wait a minute, it is what it is, let it be. And now this is just a Mackinac Lake. And I have heard sometimes people say, well, geez, if they get rid of all these Mackinac, heck, a lot of people now make a living on it as a guide or whatever. People like to catch them. Address that a little, because it isn't like you guys are saying, okay, we're going to get rid of all of them, right?
That's right. There's no way you could.
No.
And the biologists knew that from the beginning. They have said, there's no way we can get rid of all of the lake trout in Flathead Lake. There's too many of them. They're all over the lake. They've gone up into Glacier Park from the lake. They're in the river system. You couldn't get rid of them if you wanted to. What we're trying to do is just reduce the numbers.
Right.
So that the native fish, can have a chance to rebound and maybe increase in their numbers.
Yeah, allow those native fish to get a foothold, or should I say a fin hold on what's there. So you're just helping them get get that competition going, so that we can have a lake that is much more of a multi-species lake and bring back that native species. So,
anglers asked for the opportunity when they were doing the co-management planning. They had meetings with different stakeholders in this whole issue. And the anglers said at that time, if you're going to reduce the numbers in Flathead Lake, give us a chance.
Yeah.
Give us a chance to be part of this. And so that's what the Tribal Council decided to do when they started sponsoring these events, is you have to incentivize people to come out there. It's costly. I mean, you've got your gas, your boats, your tackle. Jason knows how much it costs to go out there. And that's one of the reasons, like, for this spring event, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes sponsor up to $225,000 in cash and prizes that will be awarded to the anglers at the end of the event. And there's a lot of different ways to win.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was going to ask you about is what was another very unique part of this tournament that you really don't see in other fishing tournaments is that the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes came up with a lot of incentives to give all types of fishermen the ability to participate in this tournament. And I think that's very unique, is that, there's a lot of people, like we'll be talking to Jason here in a minute, and you want to catch as many as you can, but there are incentives for other people to just win in certain different categories. And that talk about all the different ways a person can benefit if they participate in the tournament.
Okay, if you go out there and fish and you turn in just one fish, you still could qualify for a lottery drawing that begins at $2,000 if your number gets drawn. You know, that's all it takes. The lottery drawings go down to $100. So we do 34, I think, of those. We have tagged fish out there. They're up to $10,000. And one fish can get you that. We had a guy one day going by on his way to Missoula for dinner or something. He stopped, put his little boat in the water, went out by Bird Island, fished for a bit, brought in one fish, and it was a $1,000 tagged fish. That was the only fish he turned in the whole tournament. So you can bring in a tagged fish. We've had people off the docks catch tagged fish because they've been released all over the lake. Fish move around, so you don't know where they're going to be anyway. But, there's that opportunity. We have different categories for, like, the top 20 anglers, like Jason and those guys that go out there and try to hit this as much as they can. They usually end up in the top 20 category, where the prizes there for each person from first to 20th go from $950 down to like $200. We have bonus dollars. Once you get your 11th fish, you start accumulating what we call bonus dollars. And as your total of fish go up in the event, you go up into a higher category for the bonus dollars. We just increase that. So, I think it tops out now at $6.50 a fish or something like that. Once you get way up there. Mm-hmm. But, to go out there and catch a couple hundred fish, you'll make enough doing that to pay for your gas and your tackle. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the way that the tribes have come up with Barry. Barry does a lot of investigating of these things, and his suggestions are being used by the council, and that's what they've put out there to get mountain fish.
Do you know how much cash has been awarded since all this began? Do you have any idea?
I don't have any idea what the exact total would be.
It's a bunch.
A lot of expenses also, that I don't know what those totals are at all. But like this one is up to $225,000, and since we increase the bonus, it's going to be close to that. We've gone over what we've estimated sometimes that we're going to pay out, but usually it's pretty close to what we say is going to be out there. So,
how much can a top angler make in the tournament? Now, this goes on for a while. This isn't like your typical 1 or 2 day tournament. This goes on for a while. But how much can let's say someone wins the tournament as far as they catch the most fish? Give us an idea of how much that could end up being.
Catching a high total of fish could get you up into I'll just say 10,000. 8,000 $10,000. But then if you luck out and get a couple good lottery prizes drawn, you can add to that.
Mm-hmm.
So you just never know how much you're going to end up with. You can we have a bonus chart, and if anybody wants that, all they have to do is email me for that. We have a bonus chart. A lot of people will look at that and they set a goal of where they want to be at the end of the event. This event lasts for 9 weeks. You can fish one day, or you can fish every day of it, or you can fish, part of it and not fish the half or whatever. So you can choose what you want to do, and then if you set a goal for yourself and try to catch that goal, if the fishing's good, that works out well. But sometimes this is weather driven out there on Flathead Lake. The wind is their enemy out there, and so we hope we don't have a whole lot of windy days, because that means that our total is going to be higher at the end of the event, and that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're saying when you first started, you got a little over 800 fish. Now, since this tournament has been established and you have a lot more people fishing it, what's the total number of fish that get caught, say, in a typical Spring Mack Days?
It ranges from 13,000 up to 28,000. You never know what we're going to end up with. So it just depends. Just depends on a lot of different things.
Now, so what do you do with all those fish? So you got all these people catching. Say at the end of it, you've pulled in over 20,000 fish. What happens to all those fish?
Okay, on Flathead Lake, anglers can use 2 poles, and they can have 2 hooks on each pole. When we first started the event, the limit you could bring in was 20 fish. Guys were coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hey, what am I going to do the rest of the day?"
Yeah.
So they increased it up to 50. Same thing was happening. By noon, they were coming in and they were done for the day.
Right.
Now it's to 100, and people were saying, "You're never going to see 100 fish come in." Well, they do. Ask Jason Mahlen. Jason had 18 days during an event that he had 100 fish in 2019. He had 100 fish average. So his total that year was 2,134 fish. So can you imagine?
Wow.
I guess they tell me that to get 100 fish a day, and Jason can answer this for you, everything's got to go just right. No fish tangles, no nothing,
Right.
So they can bring in 100 fish a day.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I'm rambling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really love that 100 fish, and everything does have to be right. And I have on my license plates on my truck, I have go limit. I think I'm really hoping Cindy changes that and we can go to no limit.
Yeah, that's great. I will write that down.
So the most you can catch in a day then is 100. And then is there size limits or any of that?
You can catch 100 fish a day up to 30 inches.
Okay.
On the north end of the lake, the 30 to 36 is called a slot limit, and they have to be returned to the lake on the north end of the lake. On the south half of the lake, the tribal council took that limit off, and so you can do 100. And some of them could be slot limit fish if you wanted. They can bring in a tag fish if it's a slot fish, but not on the north half. We do not, to try to keep this even for everybody on the whole lake, though, we do not give out tickets for any fish over 30 inches.
Okay.
So we're still trying to, keep that part of it even for everybody.
Okay.
We do have a category for the largest fish. It has to be 36 inches or over,
mm-hmm.
and it has to be over 20 pounds. There's a $500 prize for that, sponsored by Brett's RV and Marine, that the angler wins if they have that large fish. We also have smallest fish prizes. There's 2 of those, $250 prizes go to the smallest fish, and that's a fun event for the guys to to all try to get.
And back to what I was asking before, though, what do you do with all these fish? Let's say you've got 20,000 fish that come in.
Okay, so the limit is 100, and how many people want to go out there and catch 50 or 70 or 100 fish and take them home and clean them? They can take their fish if they want. They can take part of them if they want, or they can donate them to us. We process those fish. We have staff on hand. We have an electric fillet machine. They go through that fillet machine. We bag them. We put them in the freezer. And we do sell those fish to help offset some of the costs of putting on the event. It's like a drop in the bucket, but it still helps sustain the event. So we process them. We have distributors that come in, pick them up. They get distributed, from Whitefish to Bozeman to Billings.
And
different restaurants.
So different stores, different restaurants sell them. So nothing's going to waste here, I guess, is where I'm getting at then.
All the small fish and the fish that we don't process, all the insides of them and everything goes to a composter too. We do dump some back into the lake, but a lot of it goes to composting.
So how is that effort going as far as the sales of fillets in stores and that? Is that starting to get pretty popular?
Yeah, it is. We can't keep up with the demand during the summer months because a lot of it goes down around Yellowstone Park. And so those stores and restaurants down there sell a lot of it. So we are always really trying to keep up with that.
So what would you say is the most popular dish that you've heard that the restaurants, sell or prepare?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Some of them smoke it and put it in salads. Some of them deep fry fillets, the pieces. Actually, the most popular I've always heard is our Mack Days fish that we used to have at the end of the event at our fish fry. So that was always the most popular event. And Mike was just showing me, in the fall event, one of our anglers did get up to 20,000 in that event. So you can make some money if you go out there and fish every single day and bring in a lot of fish.
Well, one last question, and then I want to get Jason in here too, but I want you to stick around, Cindy, because we'll probably, ask you a few things too. But for someone that says, they're listening to this podcast, they've never fished Mack Days, or maybe have never fished a tournament ever, and they go, well, geez, I'm not a pro angler. I wouldn't know how to catch 100 fish, and this tournament's probably not for me. That is not the case at all. Explain why really this is a great tournament for anyone that wants to fish it.
It is. If you're a beginner, you just have to go out there and try, watch the other anglers, maybe ask them if you can come close to their boat and watch them. Mike, can I tell him what I used to call you? When Mike first started fishing this event, I had a nickname for him. It was One Fish because that's all he was catching. He would come in at the end of the day with one fish, and finally he said, I'm going to figure this out or I'm done.
This is your husband, Mike, right?
So he went out and really started getting in, studying it and learning what he needed to do. And, now he's always one of the up in the top angler categories. So, you just got to keep at it. I tell people when they come in and they're going out their first day, I say, if you don't have good luck, I always think it takes 3 or 4 trips out there before you finally start catching some fish and get this figured out. If they go talk to, maybe the vendors in some of the tackle dealers, might get tips from them. When we get our website back up, which we don't have back up right now, we're going to put our tips back on there on how to catch these fish. If people want to enter Mack Days, the best way for them to enter right now is just to email me, cindy.benson@cskt.org with their name, address, telephone number, and we'll get them entered. Or they can enter the last day or the day they come in. We take entries up until the last day.
Up until last day. So you can get involved in this tournament anytime you want. Another unique thing about this tournament. So let's pull Jason in here. Jason Mahlen, you have been done quite well in this tournament. First, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
I grew up in eastern Montana in a really small town. It's on Highway 2. It's called Bainville. And it's a very small town, like 200 people. When I was about 12 years old, my family moved to Kalispell. And when I was 13 years old, I went to work for a company called, I was cleaning up there, called Lower Valley Meat Processing. And that's where I still am today.
Okay. Now, when was your first Mack Days tournament? When did you first get involved?
I first got involved. My boss would take me. The owner would take me to. He would take me out on Flathead Lake, and I was from a little small town. Never seen it. Flathead Lake is huge.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't have a boat or anything. So, we'd get a little bit slow, in the wintertime, springtime. So he would take us fishing and we would just have a riot. I just had the time of my life out there. But we would still, you catch 5 or 10 fish and that was just the greatest day you ever had. That's how I got hooked.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, Jason, you can think about this, but tell us about what made you decide, I'm going to keep doing this. We'll talk a bit about that when we come back right after this. I want to talk a bit about a very special company located in western Montana, Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They were established in 1977, and since that time, guiding customers through the woods has been their passion throughout their history. The main focus at Superior Hardwoods of Montana has been to provide the finest wide plank flooring and unique building materials available anywhere. One of the things I noticed right away about the owner of Superior Hardwoods of Montana, John Medliger, and his son Corey, and the rest of the staff there is they're very proud to offer the largest selection of in-stock flooring in the western United States. See, for over 40 years, they've been known for leading the industry in reclaimed and antique building materials, and the success that followed has allowed them to, now get this, stock over 11 acres of stunning architectural lumber that awaits the perfect addition to your home. One thing I want you to remember is just because they're located in Missoula, Montana, that does not mean they can't help you turn your home into a piece of historical art if you live somewhere else. They have been guiding folks from as far away as Hawaii and beyond through the woods for many years. So no matter if your project is located across the street from them, across the state, or somewhere else in the world, they can't wait to turn your house into a dream home. Their goal is simple. They stand ready to deliver the best choices with reliability and honesty, helping at any phase of a project with inspirational advice. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they actually treat their customers as friends and family. So the choice is yours. But if I were you, I would go to superior-hardwoods.com. superior-hardwoods.com. Of course, you're more than welcome to call them, 406-235-7452, or, they'd love you to visit 5120 Highway 93, just south of Missoula, Montana. They can't wait to guide you through the woods at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Go see them. You're going to love what they do to your home. We are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast talking with Cindy Benson, who does a great job in helping put this Mack Days tournament on, and Jason Mahlen, who is with us. He is one of the top anglers and has been for a while. So, Jason, you before the break, you were telling us that you started out, you really didn't know a lot about fishing. You hadn't been on a great big lake like Flathead Lake. So your boss was taking you out. You were starting to have some fun out on the lake. What made you decide, I want to give this Mack Days thing a try?
Well, there was actually, he would take me out to a famous location on the GPS that he called 39, Fish Hole 39. Now, this is a famous spot, and it's out on the Delta. Mm-hmm. And the reason that it's called Fish Hole 39 is because there was 39 slot fish caught there in one day.
Wow. And
that's a riot. That's fun.
Yeah.
So after that, of course, I mean, not one person caught them. It was just the boat had caught 39 slot fish. But that was a day that you just, you do. Those are those rare days. You start hearing. Normally, you go out there and you catch 5 or 10 fish, and that's a great day. You start hearing these. You start hearing this kid catching 50 fish a day, and he's beating all the adults out. His name was Stephen Nathy.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, there's just no way you can go out there and catch 50 fish. It's just not possible. And then you start seeing all these guys out there, all the Benson boys, Mike Benson, who is a legend, Steve Benson, Jerry Benson, Wes Shockley, all catching 50 fish a day consistently. And so that's what got me, is like, there's no way these guys are catching 50 fish. And if they are, I want to figure out how to do it. How do you catch 50 fish in a day? It just seemed like it wasn't possible.
Mm-hmm. And so then you decided to get out and do that. Now, this Spring Mack Days coming up, you're going to be fishing it. So how many Mack Days will this be then that you've been participating in the tournament?
Yeah. So I have participated in probably almost all the spring ones, and the first few I would just I was probably catching 20 fish the whole tournament. I didn't really get it figured out. I'm not, probably for the third time Cindy was saying you got 3. I'm not that good. It probably took me a couple of years to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Apparently I'm a little slow, but I've won it 7 times. I came in second more than I want to say, probably 4 times in second place. I came in 4th before, mm-hmm. and then I've been in like 20th place before. So,
mm-hmm. But it was something that you found was, okay, yeah, I can catch that many fish too. You really got into it, and this became a fun thing to do. Now, as I said in the beginning of the show, there are 2 Mack Day tournaments. There's the Spring Mack Day, Mack Days, which is coming up. Cindy, it starts on the 14th, right?
Yes.
14th of March. And then we have Fall Mack Days. Now, do you participate in both Spring and Fall Mack Days, Jason?
I do. The Fall Mack Days, I just put a little bit of time into. My job is pretty busy that time of year. Mm-hmm. I mostly just I'm thankful to fish the spring tournament.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into that a little bit about how you approach Spring Mack Days and what you do. So what time of the day do you usually head out onto the water? And first of all, I guess the first question is, do you fish every single day of Spring Mack Days?
Last year I didn't fish every day. Mm-hmm. But I've certainly in the years past fished every day that the wind was a wind advisory.
Right.
So, and even though even though some of those days you try to get out and then you realize that you're an idiot and you got to go back to shore.
Yeah, that can be a little dangerous when it really gets rolling out there. So what time do you usually start on a typical Spring Mack day?
Usually, wake up at 4 a.m. and then I've got a little bit of a drive, not much, but in the early part of the tournament, you're still looking at dark for a couple hours. So I don't get too crazy, but towards the end of the tournament, it's daylight at 5 o'clock. So
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting up early and heading out there. Let's talk about the gear that you take. Now you're fishing for, a lake trout. These are very large fish, or they can get that way. And so the gear is obviously a little more unique than, say, just someone that was going out to do a little fly fishing, obviously. So what gear do you use to get out and go fishing?
So most of the time it's, you can go to Zimmer tackle, and I use a 1.25 ounce jig. Okay. Now, all the top 10 guys, they're all using, everyone has their own style and uses their own jigs. So, I mean, that's just what I use. But there's many ways to catch these fish.
Mm-hmm. But your technique is jigging. Is there a particular color that works best? Tell us a bit about what that jig looks like.
Just a round-headed jig.
Mm-hmm.
You really try to keep a sharp hook, and I usually have a fly above it.
Okay. And what's the fly? What's the fly look like?
The fly is just a small glow fly, usually with just a piece of cut bait on it.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of bait are you using?
I'm using either pike minnow or pea mouth.
Okay. And so when you say that you've got the fly above it, are you saying that then you're using like two different setups then? You've got the jig below with hook and then a fly as well? Or is it just a fly that's covering that jig?
No, there's a fly above the jig.
Okay.
Zimmer tackle has that all ready to go for anglers. It's really what has worked for me.
Well, and Dick Zimmer is a legend, and somebody that knows about what to use to catch any kind of fish in that lake. That's the guy. I've had him on this podcast. Fascinating guy and great tackle. Okay, so you've got your Zimmer rig that you're using. What determines where you're going to start on the lake? And why?
I'll wake up. I'll start on one end of the lake. Depending on a lot of times I fish alone. I fished with my brother for years, but now I fish alone. Mm-hmm. So you try to figure. It's nice to put in at Yellow Bay. If the wind picks up, at least you don't have to. You can kind of put your boat on the dock and it's a little bit safer to put your boat on a trailer. So I'll start on one end, depending on the wind, which way the wind is going to blow. And I'll go from there. I'll start on the north end of the lake. And if I'm not catching anything, I will work my way to the very edge down Skidoo Bay, if that's where I got to go.
Okay. Now, so you may start way up north and then work your way down. So what, with the jig, are you stationary then? So you find a spot and just stationary and jig, or how are you doing it that way?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll find it. I have unfortunately too many spots on my GPS where I'll start somewhere, and then I'll start. You love to be shallow. And when I mean shallow, I mean like 150 feet. If you could catch fish at 150 feet deep, I mean, you can reel them in so fast and you get a big smile on your face. So that you would love to catch them in the shallow early morning, but if they're not there, they'll let you know if they're not there.
Okay.
You sit there for 30 minutes and you catch a fish. It's time to leave.
Okay, so about 30 minutes is what you give it, because that's one thing in a tournament where fishermen can sometimes you spend too much time going from spot to spot instead of, the old saying, you can't catch fish if your hook's not in the water. So you give it about 30 minutes. If you're not consistently bringing in fish, then it's time to go to the next spot. So then, as you get out and get going with the jigging, are you going down to the bottom and then, jigging off of the bottom, or how deep are you taking that?
Mike Benson told me one time, I asked him how he was doing, and he said, I was doing good. I'm just hucking and chucking is what he told me. And, I'm like, hucking and chucking that, and I kind of took that and I was like, you cast it out just like bass fishing, cast it out about as far as you can. And then you work it back into the boat. And that's really what you're trying to do. Instead of 6 feet deep, though, you're 150, 200 feet deep, but you're trying to do that same thing. And I'm right on the bottom. I'm right in the mud or the rocks, just dragging that jig.
Okay. So you're dragging it along. Now, there's a lot of different techniques to jigging. Fishermen all have their different styles and that.
Yeah.
So you're going down on the bottom. Then are you just doing little short, pull ups, or are you actually going to the bottom, pulling along, and then retrieving it all the way back up to you?
I'll go down to the bottom and I'll retrieve it back to my boat if I haven't caught one, and I'll go up and down, for as long as my patience will let it go. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just depending on the bite. If I'm not catching fish at all, I'm going to be reeling up and going somewhere else. But, I'll let it sit there for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll reel it back up, put a new piece of bait on, throw it back out.
Mm-hmm. And so when it's down there for 5 or 10 minutes, are you just letting it sit, or are you doing a little pop every now and then?
I'm not doing any. Everybody asks me that, what are you doing? I'm not doing anything.
Really?
Okay. I'm like Cindy says on the note, she sends out to tight lines everybody. I tight line. It's tight lined. Mm-hmm. I'm not really doing up or down, or I'm not, a little bit, but I'm not, I'm just tight lining it. I'm just making sure I know exactly what that jig is doing. If anything's touching it. So I guess I'm tight lining it, mm-hmm. and I'm not doing a whole lot. If I'm doing a whole lot, I'm moving really slow, and I just want to know at all time what's going on with that jig.
Okay. Now, when a Mack hits that thing, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
Every fish is kind of different. Do they really pop it, or give us a feel for when that's a Mack?
That's a great question, Dale. A lot of times the biggest thing you can do is the braided line. I don't get crazy with it. I stick about 15-pound test braid, and my rods are they're NRX G Loomis NRXs, and they're about $600 a piece, mm-hmm. and I have 7 of them. Mm-hmm. The bite you get 70% of the time is just a very small, little tiny bite.
Really?
If there's wind or waves at all, you won't feel it. You won't even know it's there. You'll lift up and you'll be like, oh, I just missed one. You won't have time to jerk. You need to have a cat-like reflex, but those are going to be about 70% of your fish on those little tiny bites. Okay. And then the other ones, yeah, sure, you'll get those fish to come by and hit it really hard, but it's rare. It's a rare thing. And a lot of people think lake trout fishing, they're thinking about being in a river where they come by and they're in 20 feet of water and they really give you a big bite, but that's not the case on Flathead Lake.
Mm-hmm. So you're down on the bottom. You're keeping the line tight. You're waiting for that little tug, and then at that point, are you setting it big time, or just start bringing it up?
No, I set the hook. Sometimes I get a little crazy with it. I snapped off 8 or 10 hooks last year. If sometimes you get on a little drought where you haven't caught nothing in 30 minutes, then you finally get a bite and then you jerk it way too hard.
Right. Yeah, I'm guilty
but yeah,
of that one.
You need to have a cat-like reflex. I take some people out fishing sometimes, and I can see they're getting a bite, and then I'm like, you need to jerk, and then they jerk about a half hour later, and it's like, you're not going to catch any fish doing that.
So as soon as you feel that little tap, then it's time to set the hook. Now, if you're working 2 rods, how do you do that? You learn over time to be a little ambidextrous, where you just can do it with both hands. Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if you're reeling one in, you got to let the other rod sit in a holder. Yeah.
So you keep both rods in your hands at all times, then waiting for that feel?
Well, Dale, I do, but if I have both hands, and if I have both rods in my hands, it's probably not because I'm not catching any fish.
Yeah.
So you really want to get into a groove where you've got one fishing pole in your hand, you're reeling one up, the other one's going down with a fresh piece of bait on it, and you're reeling a fish up on the other one. And when you bring your other fish up, you put it in the cooler, you ID it. It's important. Put it in your cooler, get a fresh piece of bait on there, throw it out, and then you grab your other pole and it's just hitting the bottom, and you yank another one, you hook another fish.
Now, that's
where you get a big smile on your face, Dale.
Yeah, then you're just going bam, 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 pull the pole. When you say you ID it, what do you mean there?
I mean, it's really important. I watched some guys turn in some fish last year, and they only had 3 fish in their cooler, and one of them was like about an 8-pound bull trout. You can see the bull trout orange spots the size of a quarter or half a mile away. I'm not sure what they were. It's not that hard, but ID your fish. Make sure you're catching lake trout.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying there. And they're in the rules and regs that the FWP puts out. You can look that up and see it. Of course, online there's ways. It doesn't take long to get pretty good at knowing exactly what you got on, right?
It doesn't. It doesn't take long.
Yeah, and so I don't. For those of you that may be beginners or haven't fished for lake trout before, don't let that intimidate you. Don't let that.
I don't. Don't let that intimidate you. If you just look at your fish, that just put it on its side and take a look, make sure it's a lake trout. Or you can just look at the top too. I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but with this in particular case, if it has great big orange spots on it, I would immediately throw it back in the water.
Yeah. Can't keep those. Once you've got the fish hooked and on, what does that feel like? I mean, are you in for a pretty good fight? How long does it typically, let's say you're 150 feet down, you hook a fish, how long does it take to bring one of those up?
Dale, normally I really try hard not to target larger fish. I just want the small ones, and I want to reel those things up as fast as I can. I put a big smile on my face, and I just reel it. If you catch a bigger one, you're going to know it right away. It's going to start tugging a little line back on you, and I really try to avoid that at all costs. Sometimes you get stuck catching a big one, but I try to avoid them.
Okay, and of course the reason there is you're getting paid by the fish, so you want that tonnage. You want to try to get to that 100 every day. Gotcha. Right. Okay.
And in my opinion, if you start fishing around the Delta, you're going to be catching bigger fish. If you're getting in too close, if you're getting in that 150, 140, 130 feet range depth on the delta, there's a good chance you're going to hook into one of those bigger fish. I try to avoid that.
Okay. So there's some good strategy there for those of you listening. Now, in your case, since you're jigging, you've got some weight on there and down you go. You're not worried about using downriggers or anything like that, right?
I'm not much of a downrigger. I did it just a very little bit, but I'm not much of a downrigger. So.
Okay. All right. Now, for the rest of the technique, once you've got that fish in, you're going to pop that bad boy in the cooler, going to bait back up and go down immediately, or are you going to go ahead and bring the other one up and then both of them go down?
Nope. I'm throwing that. I'm putting a fresh piece of bait on there. Sometimes I hit it with flashlight. Those things kind of glow.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Unless the sun is out, I'll pop them with a quick flash of light just to kind of freshen up the glow on them, and then I send it back out.
Mm-hmm.
As fast as I can.
And what color is that glowing? Do you vary your colors based on what might be hitting, or is it the same thing you're using all the time?
I just stick with either the chartreuse or the white.
Okay, chartreuse or white. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, for those folks that are listening that say, okay, I've never done a tournament before. This sounds like something that's going to be just way too much of a learning curve. That isn't necessarily the case. And one of the things, when I had Mike on and Scott Bombard on last time, they were talking about how when they first started, they got a lot of advice from other anglers, and that really helped them, improve what they were doing and all that. That's still the case, isn't it? That though you guys are all competing, you're pretty free with advice to help beginners out, right?
Yes. That's the difference between this tournament and other tournaments. Those guys are, they're not going to put you in their boat and reel up the fish for you, but
yeah, they're not guiding.
They'll give you advice. There's some really important things out there that you can do. The Mack Days website, they have videos, guys showing you just how they do it. That's huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't go to a bass tournament and those guys are showing you how they do it. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
It gets like super secretive. Nobody's telling you anything. And that's another thing I love about this tournament is there's a lot of camaraderie between everybody. There's a lot of folks sitting around talking about it in the evenings and saying, hey, I'm having this problem. Okay, well, here's what I do when that happens. And that thing, that's what I love about it. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that, say, a beginning angler might make that they should try to avoid?
A lot of times, this is what I did. I would have a great big fishing pole, and I thought, man, I'm going to hook onto a 50-pounder, and I want to be able to handle it. Only one problem with that: you're most likely not ever going to catch a 50-pounder, right? And so you have a great big fishing pole, and you have, and I, when I first started, I had mono line on there. So I had about a 20-foot stretch on my line. I didn't know if the fish was biting. They would probably, the only reason that I caught a slot fish is because they were the biggest thing hitting my pole. And I don't know how many fish I didn't feel. The biggest thing I could say people that do make, though, is they get out on the water and they look across the water and they see 10 boats all in one spot. So they think, that's where I'm going. That's where the fish are. That's not true at all. There's probably only 1 or 2 boats that are catching fish, and everybody else is just fishing there because 1 or 2 or 3 boats got in a pile, then 4, then 5, then 6, then everybody goes to that one spot, and try to avoid that. Okay.
So in other words, don't get into the monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. Get out there and do that. No. What about technology? What are you using to help you find the fish? Now, I know some anglers it's just, hey, I know the lake. I don't need to bother with it. I've heard of other anglers who they won't even drop a line in the water until they see something on their screen. What are you using to help you determine, okay, this is the spot, I'm putting my jigs down and going for it?
I have a Lowrance Elite 9. It's a great fish finder. The biggest thing on that is I have the Navionics chip, so I can see the structure of the lake while I'm on top of it. That's really helped me a lot. Of course, the GPS anchor helps you a ton. You gotta think back to these guys that were catching 50 fish a day back in the day. They had a rope and an anchor.
Right.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
The thing about the fish finder is I've went limit so many times where you couldn't see a fish on the bottom. So I don't trust those at all. I rarely use it. My fishing poles are my fish finder. I throw those things down on the bottom. That's what tells me if there's fish there or not. I pay no attention to the thinking that there's going to be. If I see a bunch of fish to stop on them and think they're going to bite, it's rarely that works.
Okay, so you're really just looking for the right structure, and that's what gets you started. What is it the structure you're looking for someone that's got that equipment but has maybe never fished Flathead Lake? What are they looking for to find a good Mack habitat to have success?
In my opinion, there's a mid bar. It runs the whole length of the lake, almost right out in the middle. It runs the whole lake. I don't know, it must be 9 miles or longer. I'm not sure how long it is, but and that whole thing is full of structure that you can fish. I guess I like to sit on some structure where if the wind blows, you change depth, so it's a little bit steep. And sometimes you like to throw it up a structure and kind of drag it down towards you. Sometimes you want to throw it deeper and drag it up towards you.
Okay.
If the fish are biting on the deeper spot, that's what's nice about fishing by yourself, because you're the only one catching fish in your boat, and you always have the good side.
Mm-hmm. Now, and what are these Mack feeding on? A lot of people will say, okay, I want to kind of look for where that bait is, because as we know, if the food for the Mack is there, the Macks will be there too. What are they going after, and how can that help you?
I believe that in most incidents, fishing any of that structure, I believe they're feeding on shrimp on the bottom. So
the mysis shrimp down there.
The mysis shrimp, yeah. I believe that's what you're trying to get. You're trying to get those fish that are feeding on the shrimp, and maybe your bait's going through that.
Okay.
And so they're feeding on all of it.
Mm-hmm. And thus they're a bottom bait in essence, right?
Yep.
So the reason you're getting down in there. Okay.
Right.
Now the big question I'll ask you, and some fishermen will give this information. Some say, I'm happy to give a lot of advice, but I'm not going there. What's your favorite spot? Where are your hot spots at? And if you don't want to answer, I get it. That's okay.
I can tell you what my hot spot is, but another mistake first timers make is they fall in love with the spot, and they just stick with it. And I did the same thing. I've fallen in love with a lot of spots out there, but my favorite spot is where I'm catching fish. That's my favorite spot. I have some great spots on the Delta I just love. Mm-hmm. I have some spots out in front of Yellow Bay that I love. I have some spots out in Woods Bay that I love. There's a lot of them out there. Mm-hmm. But the one I like is the one I'm catching fish
where
at.
you're catching the fish. Got it.
Yeah.
And lastly, this is another one. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, it's okay. How much money have you made on Mack Days?
I know Cindy has sent me well over 100,000 in checks.
Wow.
So yeah, over the years, it's up over 100,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So on a typical year, I mean, what are you shooting for? What would tell you that at the end of Spring Mack Days, this was a great one? How much money would that be, do you think?
Yeah. Last year, Cindy wrote me it totaled 15.5.
Woo!
Yeah.
Wow.
It puts a big smile on your face. Now, like she said, you catch $10,000 worth in fish, but if you can get lucky and hit a lottery drawing or two, then that really takes your total way up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a little bit of luck into it. There also, you catch tagged fish, you're bound to catch tagged fish sooner or later. So that also is going to add to that total. And
what tells you, okay, I'm done for the day? I mean, obviously, if you get the 100, you're done for the day. But if you're starting real early in the morning, when do you say, okay, I've had enough? If you haven't hit your 100.
Yeah, it's hard to get me off the water unless I've got 100.
Right, I hear you.
The only thing that's going to get me off the water, and I'm one of the last guys. I'm a little bit slow, so I'm one of the last guys at the fish house a lot of the times because I just don't want to give up. Mm-hmm. I just think, I've had 3 fish at 3:00 before, and that's when you really want to go home.
Yeah,
but then you're just saying, if I haven't caught a fish all day, the evening bite's going to be really good.
Uh-huh.
So you're just. You just never know. And then you end the day with 30 or 35 and think, okay, well, I've did worse than that before. So
Sure. Well, it sounds like you have fun with this though, don't you?
I love it. I love Mack Days. I encourage everybody to get out there and give it a try, get it figured out, get your own style. There's a lot to learn, but watching those videos on Mack Days is really important. There's a ton of videos out there. And
you can
get into fish. You can get into fish, like Cindy said. You can do it. You can get into fish on your first and second and third time out there. You can get it figured out.
And there's so many different ways that you can, win some money and have some fun with it. So really, it's certainly worth the time in doing it and having some fun with it. So let's take a break. And when we come back, Cindy's going to join back in and get us all dialed in so we can all be part of this great event right after this. I know our regular listeners to this podcast have heard me talk about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, but for those of you that are new here, let me start with the basics about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They are your locally owned Boss Snowplow, CM Truck Bed, and Diamond Sea Trailer dealer. They offer a wide variety of auto, truck, and trailer accessories and specialize in sales and service of trailers. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is conveniently located at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana. Now, let's get into the stuff that truly makes them special and why they are the ones we recommend if you ever need a new trailer, a snowplow, or just need service and/or advice. Let me give you an example. They carry the best snowplows on the planet. That's Boss Snowplows. So that way, when you get sick of just getting by with what you have or sick of spending a fortune to have someone else plow you out, you can come tell the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer about what and where you need to remove snow, and they will help you find the perfect Boss snowplow to get the job done right now and likely for the rest of your life. I'm going to tell you something about these Boss snowplows that just amazes me, but I truly hear about it all the time once someone I know buys one. They always say something to the effect of, Rigger, I never thought I'd say this, and I know it sounds crazy, but I actually have fun plowing snow with my Boss snowplow. And crazier yet, I like it so much I actually look for places near me that need plowing and ask property owners if I can plow it for them. Gang, I'm not exaggerating. That is the Rocky Mountain truck and trailer difference. They carry the equipment that not only is perfect for you, it actually becomes part of you. So, gang, don't end up hoping you get the right snowplow, trailer, or truck bed. Just go to rmtte.com. Look at what they have, then call them at 406-549-4243. Get all your questions answered, and then go have fun this winter. Thanks to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them, rmtte.com. That's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. We are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Cindy, let's bring you back in here to wrap things up. And Jason, if you have any other comments, feel free to just jump right in there. Give us the basics again, Cindy, as far as when you start, how they get into the tournament and all that stuff.
Okay, if people want to get signed up for Mack Days, they can email me at Cindy, C-I-N-D-Y, .Benson, B-E-N-S-O-N, at CSKT.org. Just send me your name, address, telephone number, ages of people, because we have the different categories. I will get back to them with an ID number. They can also, go out and fish, bring their fish in, and enter at the end of the day.
Okay.
We do the entries up until the last day. So when people go out and fish and they get a few fish, we do have fish pickup stations around the lake that I will email those times to them if they're interested in turning in at Big Arm or at Salish Point. FWP picks up fish up at Summers and Wayfarers. So we put that out in our rules in the information I send people, or they can come into Blue Bay. We're at the Blue Bay headquarters. We're there from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6, Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday through Sunday, we're there from 9 until 9 or half an hour before dark.
Okay.
Whichever first.
And either you, Cindy, or Jason, what are some of the best places to put in to get out there? Because like you say, you can get out and go fishing. Then when you're done, you can turn your fish in and get registered at that point, right?
Yes, that's right. With the lake being down when we first start, I think in Blue Bay works, Yellow Bay. I don't know about Wayfarers, Jason. Do you know about Wayfarers at this time of the year?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of guys that put in Wayfarers. It's a little bit of a challenge, but there's plenty of parking there, and it's a little bit rocky, so you got to be careful. You do see a lot of guys putting in at Wayfarers, so but you just got to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything on the west side that makes sense to put in over there?
Well, Big Arm you can get in and out of, but like Jason said, that's rocky over there too. You just have to be careful, and if it's windy, don't even try. I would, if it's too rough, just don't even try there. West Shore, it's rocky there also, but it's doable. You just take your time and
any good places on the south end down by Polson and that, or is it too shallow yet?
You can put in at Riverside there, but that's rocky. You have to go off the dock there or off the ramp there right now.
Oh, okay.
The one there at Salish Point, that's too shallow yet.
Mm-hmm. So what would you recommend for someone that's listening to this podcast and is doesn't know the area that well? That would be like a super reliable. Would that be like? Which one would you recommend if someone said, I can put in anywhere, where's the best place?
I would say Blue Bay, but
okay. Yellow
Bay is also a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, what do you think?
I would say Wayfarers, but be ready, have waders on. You're but then again, if the wind is going to be blowing too hard, go to Blue Bay.
Okay. All right, yeah. So that gives you folks some good stuff there. Now, and for our podcast listeners, when you found this podcast, you saw the podcast description. Down towards the bottom of there, I'm going to put Cindy's email in there, and it'll just be a link. So when you click on it, it'll open up your email app, and you can just send her the email that way, real easy. And I'll have some other information there in the podcast description. So links and all that will be very helpful, and that'll be an easy way for you guys to get information. And I'll also find some of those different videos that Jason brought up, and I'll put some links to those too, just so you folks can have some. Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
It's free.
Yes.
You don't pay to enter Mack Days.
Yeah,
so.
Jason brought that up too, that it is free to do. So
Bring the family.
yeah, and have some fun out there. You really do. As far as different things that people should bring, obviously weather can be a little unpredictable, so make sure that you do the good old Montana layering thing because it can be cold and then it can start to warm up. Is there any other things that are kind of a must-have that they should have on the boat, Jason?
Yeah. Everybody has a smartphone. Know what the weather's going to do. Know if you're going to have a 40-mile-an-hour wind. Know the weather a little bit. I like to bring a thermos full of coffee. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not catching fish, I'm moving around a lot. I'll figure something out. There you go. Yeah, and bring something to eat. Of course, that's always a good idea. Yeah. And
your life jackets are number one.
Yeah, obviously you got to have those.
And have them on. They don't do you any good if you don't have them on.
Exactly. Yeah, safety first for sure, folks. And I'll get a bunch of those links in there and those video links and that. So you guys should be ready to go. Those of you listening to the podcast, and then Cindy's email if you have more questions. She's always available to answer your questions too. It all gets underway on the 14th. Last day is when again, Cindy?
The last day is May 11th. It's a Saturday. All fish have to be in by 3 o'clock. So we have a small award ceremony that day. No fish fry, but we do have snacks. So we try to make it a fun time.
And also you can listen to the Montana Outdoor Radio Show because we'll have Cindy on each Saturday, and she always has some good tips and ideas there too. So just spend some time, learn about it, ask questions, hang out with the anglers, ask them questions, and folks, you're going to have a blast. And this is going to be a fishing tournament like no other tournament you've ever experienced. You're going to love it, and before you know it, you'll be just like Jason and showing up every year and making some money and having some fun. I want to thank both of you so much. Jason, thank you so much for your time. Cindy, anything else you wanted to throw in there before we go?
No, I just like to encourage people to come out and try it, be part of this fish conservation effort that we have going on Flathead Lake to help increase our native fish species on the lake. And, also I'd like to thank all of our troops who are out there, anybody that's listening overseas, like you mentioned in the beginning of this. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Yeah, and when you get on leave or it's time for you to come back home, be sure and stop by Mack Days and say hi and get involved in the tournament. I know every angler there would love to say thanks, and I know they'd love to have you part of this great tournament. It's an experience like you've never had before. You're gonna love it. All right, gang. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Good luck to you in this tournament, and stay in touch.
I can't wait.
Yeah, let us know how you do. And Cindy, I'll see you on the radio.
Okay, great. See you on the water, Jason.
Yep. Thank you, Cindy.
All right. Take care. There you have it, folks. That is what happens on Spring Mack Days. As I said, it's a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have a blast. And, of course, it's just a beautiful lake to be on. Until then, we'll see you next time here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. and by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.